How to build a responsive navbar with HTML, SCSS, and JavaScript. If you're new to HTML and SCSS, check out the video above right now or down below in the description where I show you guys how to get started. Links to the resources and source code in today's video will be available below as well. Let's get started. Here within the body element, I'm going to start by creating a nav element with a class of navbar. Inside of the nav, I'll create a div with the class of navbar double underscore logo, like so. And notice how I'm going to be using a double underscore, and later on I'll also be using a double dash. That's because I'm going to be using the BEM today, which stands for block, element, and modifier. This is a CSS naming method that is going to go ahead and help us organize our code, and it's also the best practice when creating SCSS like this. And notice how I have navbar and then navbar logo. That's going to come in handy in a moment when we actually start creating our SCSS. Inside of the div, I'm going to go ahead and paste in a basic Font Awesome icon. Again, these are all available on the Font Awesome website, which will be available in the description. After this, I'll create an H2 element and paste in the text, big time booking. Underneath this div, I'll create another div with the class of navbar double underscore links and an ID of nav links. Inside of this div, I'll create another div with a class of navbar double underscore links double dash close and an ID of close overlay. And the reason I'm using IDs is going to be for the JavaScript portion. Inside of this div, I'll go ahead and paste in another basic Font Awesome icon. Underneath this div, I'm going to go ahead and create an anchor element, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a hashtag symbol here for now because we're not going to link to anywhere today, but I'll go ahead and put in the text home. And then I'll go ahead and add in 3 more anchor elements right here to serve as our navigation links. We're going to have one for about, services, and contact. Then underneath this div, I'm going to create one more div with a class of navbar double underscore hamburger and an ID of hamburger, like so. And this is going to be used for when our user looks at our website on a mobile sized screen. Then I'll go ahead and paste in the hamburger Font Awesome icon. So obviously everything is showing up right now because we haven't used JavaScript or styling to manipulate any of this. So now that we're done setting up the HTML structure here of our navbar, we can go ahead and navigate to the styles.scss. And first, I want to start off by showing you guys how to create variables in SCSS. To do that, we can use a $, and then we can name it whatever we want. So I'm going to name this color primary. And then our primary color is just going to be a hex value, which is ultimately just going to be white. And now that you guys understand how to create variables, what I'm going to do is paste in the rest of the variables that I'm going to be using in today's video. So up here at the top, these are going to be our colors. So we have a list of color variables, font variables, font sizes, spacing, border radius, border widths, and shadows. And this is extremely useful in SCSS because instead of having to hard code each one of these values wherever we want to use it, all we have to do is use the radius dash small variable instead. So it just makes it a little bit easier and a little bit faster, especially if you're having to write a lot of styling and you want to follow certain conventions like certain sizing, widths, and colors inside of your website or web application. Next, we're going to have some global styling. So I'm going to go ahead and put a note, global styling, and then I can just target the body element, and I just want to make the margin 0, the font family, the font base. And you guys can see here, I'm just using the name of the variable and putting a $sign in front of it, and it just makes it a lot easier using variables instead of having to type in the whole name of the font family, for example. Then I can do font size, and I'll go ahead and say font medium, like so. And then the color of our text is just going to be text. Now that we have all of this stuff set up, we can go ahead and actually start styling the navbar here. So I'll go ahead and put a comment, navbar, and I can start by targeting the navbar class change the display to flex. Justify content is going to be space between. Align items to the center. Add a padding of space medium followed by space large. Then the background color is going to go ahead and be primary. Then I can go ahead and target the border bottom, say border thin, solid, and border color. And then the max width here, I'm actually going to go ahead and hard code in at 100 rem. And then margin is going to be 0 and auto. So at this point, we're just targeting the Navbar class. And if you're used to using CSS, what's going to happen is you're going to come back over here and you're going to want to target the Navbar logo next. So usually you would just copy this, come back over here, put a period to target a class, and then say Navbar logo. But since we're using SCSS, we don't need to do that. And since it is a child of the Navbar class over here, you guys can see the div with the Navbar __ logo is inside of the nav with the Navbar class. What we can do is go ahead and nest this within our Navbar class like so. And so these start off both with dot and navbar. So we don't need to type dot navbar again. Instead, in SCSS, we can just use the ampersand here, specify __ logo, and then just go ahead and target it like this. So ampersand __ logo inside of the Navbar class already is going to basically target the Navbar logo like it would here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just comment this out so you guys can see that right now. So this can be a little bit complicated if you're a beginner, because in normal CSS, you don't have to nest styling within other classes, and you don't have this ampersand option right here. But the other thing I want to show you guys is that, again, like I started off at the beginning talking about BEM, that sounds really complicated if you're a beginner. All that means is block element modifier. So this navbar right here is also going to be the block. And then this navbar _ logo that we're targeting right here, and if we hover over this, it also shows us as well, is going to serve as the element. So you can have multiple elements within your navbar block and also multiple modifiers within the navbar block. And in a moment, I'll be showing you guys what a modifier looks like. So here, what I need to do is change the display again to flex, align items to the center, and the gap is going to be space extra small, and then the color is going to be text. And then inside of this element, we can also nest more selectors. So now what we want to do is target the H2 element and the class FA-compass. So what we're doing here is inside of this navbar _ logo, we're targeting this icon and this H2 element, but all we're doing is nesting it inside of this selector. Here we want to change the font size to font large and the margin to 0. And technically you could make a variable to hold 0, but really that's not going to save us any time. After that, I want to target just the H2 element within the navbar __ logo class. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and say font family, and I want to use the font heading. So now you guys can see the navigation bar coming together just a little bit, but you can see it's still jumbled up a little bit because it's not completely responsive and dynamic yet. So next, I want to go ahead and target this navbar links class like so. So to do that, what we need to do is get out of this element like so, and we need to go underneath it. But keep in mind, we're still within the navbar block, and this is going to be a good example of another element. So here I can use the ampersand again, followed by __ and links. And here I need to change the display to flex and the gap to space large. Next, inside of the navbar links selector here, I want to go ahead and target the anchor elements inside of it and say text to decoration, none. Color is going to be text, and font weight is going to be 500. And inside of this anchor selector right here, what I want to do is specify an ampersand to again target the anchor element here, but now on hover. And I'll change the color on hover to accent 1. And now outside of the anchor selector here, I want to target a modifier. So I'll type modifier right here like so you guys can tell the difference, especially if you're looking at this in the source code after the fact. And I want to use the ampersand, and this gets kind of confusing. So what we're doing here is, since we're inside of the navbar selector right here, and we're inside of the links selector, what this is going to target is it's going to target the navbar _links close right here. So keep in mind it's using both of these as well. And once we finish this out in the SCSS, you guys will see that it's also going to show in VS Code. So I'll say ampersand _close. And if we hover on this, you guys can see exactly what class this is referring to. And all we need to do here is say display none. And then keep in mind, we're still within this element right here. So we need to get outside of that element now. Start off with an ampersand and say hamburger. And again, you guys can see exactly what this is referring to like so. So we're targeting the navbar hamburger class. And then I can say font size, font large variable here. The cursor we want to set to a pointer and change display to none. So now you guys can see our navigation bar coming together on full screen devices. But what you're going to notice is if we shrink down enough here, so I'll go ahead and inspect, everything is jumbled up together and it's not displaying correctly. So sometimes that tool doesn't work good. So what I'll do is just go ahead and show it manually. So now you guys can see if we shrink down a little bit, everything kind of jumbles together. So we need to make this actually work for a mobile device. And to do that, the first thing we need to do is go down below and create a media query. So we'll say @media, and I'll say max width 768 pixels. And first, since we're using rems, which are a relative unit, I can go ahead and target the HTML element directly and say font size and change it to 75%. So anything under 768 pixels, it's going to automatically shrink the relative units that we're using, rems, down to 75%. And keep in mind, the default font size in the HTML element is 100%. So we're going from 100% to 75% on mobile devices under 768 pixels. Next, what I want to do is go ahead and again target the navbar class, like so. Change the position to fixed, the inset to 0, the background to an RGBA color value, and I just want this to be 0, 0, 0 for black, followed by a 0.95 opacity. Then I accidentally messed up here because this shouldn't be targeting the navbar class directly. What I missed is I need to start with ampersand and target the links here. So all of these styles that we just created need to actually target the navbar _links class. So we're still going to be staying within this selector here. And now we're going to continue typing up our styling. So we'll say flex direction, column, and justify content, center, followed by align items, center. Then the gap is going to be 0, and change the display to none because we don't want that overlay to display until we actually click a button. And then just to make sure this displays on top of everything, we'll change the Z index to 1000. So still within the navbar links selector, I want to go ahead and target the anchor elements, and I'm just going to go ahead and change the font size to font large and the margin to space small, followed by the padding of space small again, and then we'll go ahead and again target the color, and this is just going to be the primary. And then what we want to do here is specify underneath that the ampersand followed by dot show. And if you look at the index.html, you're going to notice that that show class is not actually displaying anywhere, but we are going to be using this inside of JavaScript to show our mobile sized navigation. And we'll say display flex. And then underneath the show, we also want to use the ampersand again, followed by a double dash and targeting close. And this one is actually available in the index.html right now. If you guys scroll right here, you can go ahead and see it. And so I'll say display block. Position is going to be absolute, followed by a top of space large times 0.75. And then right is going to be space large. The font size is going to be font extra large. The cursor is again going to be a pointer, and the color is going to be our primary variable. Next, we want to skip 2 of these closing brackets here, and underneath these 2, we want to use the ampersand and target the underscore hamburger class selector right here. And all we need to do is display block like so. So now you guys can see that for mobile devices, we are successfully showing our mobile navigation. But if we click on this icon here, nothing happens because we haven't set up our JavaScript yet. But if I make this a full screen device like a desktop here, you guys can see that we're showing the full-sized navigation bar. So now all we need to do is make this dynamic with JavaScript. So I'll go to the scripts.js file here, and just to save some time, I'm going to paste in the JavaScript for today. This will be available below through the source code link at GitHub. And if you want to learn more about how to use JavaScript, I'll leave a link to a video where I teach you JavaScript in the description as well. So now if we go over here and click on this button, you guys will see that our mobile navigation appears successfully, and we can also close out of it like so. Now we are done creating our fully dynamic and responsive navigation bar.